So the second intervention that often happens in the first stage that I want to touch on is Pitocin. So Pitocin is artificial oxytocin. We talked about oxytocin in a prior video. Oxytocin is what makes things contract. It's part of what starts labor in the first place. And as your level of oxytocin rises as you go through labor, your contractions get stronger, longer, closer together, and your body creates endorphins that match that process and help make the whole thing manageable, so that as your contractions get longer, stronger, closer together, your body has its natural morphine helping you, assisting you along the way, assuming you're not stressed and all the things we've talked about before. So here's what Pitocin is. Pitocin is artificial oxytocin, and it can be offered at 2 times. One is if a mama has gone beyond 40 weeks. For some caregivers, that could be 40 weeks and a few days. For some caregivers, it's longer than that. It's really good when you're interviewing your caregivers to ask that kind of question of, do you have a limit for how long you let mamas go in pregnancy? Part of why it's helpful to ask that question is that you're gathering information, and I would also gather information from your family. So how long were your mom's labors, her pregnancies? Did she go to 40 weeks? Did she go to 42 weeks? How about your grandmother? Allow yourself to gather information. It doesn't mean that you're going to have the same birth experience that your moms or your sisters have had, but there are some correlations. So if you find out that your entire female side of your family, they've all gone to 42 weeks, and you're interviewing a caregiver who says 40 weeks and 3 days is my max, and then I give you Pitocin, well, that would be a really good thing for you to know before you get to 40 weeks and 3 days. That would be a hard time to change caregivers. I, on the other hand, I have always had a 26-day cycle, sometimes 25 days. And when I interviewed the mamas in my family, I found out that everybody had their babies early. So it was no shock when my babies were born 2 weeks early on average. And that was to be expected. Nobody was concerned about that at all. So knowing your family history is just one piece of understanding this, and then allowing yourself to find a caregiver that will potentially allow you to be pregnant until your baby is ready to come. That's the one time that Pitocin is offered, is when you go past 40 weeks. The other time is if you're in labor and your labor is stalled, your labor is taking too long, maybe there's some kind of indication that things need to speed up. Well, one thing we know is that cesarean rates go up on Fridays, they go up on holidays. So there are reasons other than medical necessity that births are hurried up. And Pitocin hurries birth up. So you want to be able to ask the question of why, right? Like, why does my birth need to be hurried up? Is it just because there's going to be change of staff, or is it because there is really an issue going on with my baby? And so just that question can be helpful. But the reason that you want to avoid Pitocin is that it makes your labor unnatural. And what I mean by that is it turns labor into something that Mother Nature did not intend. So we talked about contractions lasting 30 to 90 seconds. Well, with Pitocin, contractions can last longer than that. We talked about labor, that slowly, as your endorphins build up, your oxytocin builds up and your contractions get stronger. Well, in the case of Pitocin, your contractions can go from 0 to 60, and your body does not have the endorphins yet to keep up with that. And then closer together, we expect contractions to get closer together as labor goes on, but sometimes with Pitocin, mamas will literally get no break between contractions. It's just almost like one long contraction. And that just that's unnatural. It is not working with your body so that you can manage this. It's your endorphins can't keep up, and you're much more likely to ask for pain medicine at that point. I have had students who have had Pitocin and have managed it naturally, but I don't know that any of us want to try that. So avoiding Pitocin, if at all possible, is a great thing to do. And another list that I have available if you want to ask for it, and if enough people ask for it, again, I will make a video of it, is a list of how to naturally get your oxytocin flowing. So if you're not going into labor, if your labor is taking a long time, there are things that you can do to boost your oxytocin. I started having high blood pressure with one of my babies at the end of pregnancy, and my midwives said, basically, here's this list. Start doing these things, because we don't want your high blood pressure to become something that forces you to go into the hospital. We want you to be able to stay home. So let's kind of like try to get this thing started. So there are things that you can do, and I was blessed to be able to get that baby out at home. The last thing I want to mention about Pitocin is that while a mama can receive an epidural and experience less discomfort with labor, that's pain medicine that will make it so that she does not feel the discomfort of these unnaturally strong contractions. Your baby is not receiving the epidural. And so your baby is still experiencing these longer, stronger, closer together contractions that are stronger than Mother Nature intended. Unless you have a very, very small amount of Pitocin, the Pitocin can be tolerated, but it is more likely that your baby could go into distress with Pitocin. It doesn't mean it always happens. That is not the case at all. It just increases the odds. And so there's that domino effect of, now we've given mom an epidural, she's comfortable, but now baby goes into distress. Baby ends up being born by cesarean, and the doctor saves its life, right, through this surgery. But the question remains of, was that surgery necessary, right? Would it have been necessary had we just let things go at their own pace? And this is the piece. As a marriage and family therapist, I've worked with so many mamas who have had experiences with childbirth not ending up the way that they wanted it to. And I've seen a great divide between the mamas who asked the questions, felt really good about their caregiver. They just felt like all the way along they were asking questions, their caregiver was honoring their choices, their birth partner was asking questions, right? They really understood what was happening and felt like they had informed consent, and understood that when their labor went sideways and they ended up having that surgery, that it was necessary. That is a very different experience from a mom who at the end of surgery is wondering if it was necessary and is feeling suspicious or betrayed by her caregiver. And that's or betrayed by herself for not asking questions, or her partner who said like, shh, don't just listen to the doctor. So this is important. That kind of trauma is very hard to get over. And so when a mama feels at peace with her medically necessary interventions, she can heal and get to mothering. And when a mama feels like her rights were taken away, or like she had no power, I've just seen it creep into a deeper place that's harder to shift. It's not impossible, of course, but all of us want to get to the job of mothering, not get to the job of healing, if at all possible. So again, this is not medical advice. This is advice about advocating for yourself, so that you really know who you're working with, what you want to ask, and how to work with this precious body of yours, so that you are most likely to get through this journey of childbirth intact and healthy and ready to hold your baby and begin the journey of mothering from a place of real health and empowerment. So may it be so.